I got home 2 hours earlier than usual. No particular reason, just a canceled meeting and a sudden craving for silence. The kind you only get when the world doesn't expect you anywhere. I parked the car further down the street, out of habit maybe, or maybe because something already felt off. The house looked normal from the outside. Lights off, curtains drawn the way she liked it. But the moment I stepped inside, I noticed the shoes. They weren't mine. Polished brown leather, too formal for a friend, too big for her brother, and definitely not the kind of thing you wear to a yoga class. Not that I believe the yoga story anyway. They sat there, aligned too neatly, like someone was trying not to leave a trace and failed. My own shoes felt heavy when I took them off, like they didn't want to sit next to those strangers. I didn't call out her name. Just stood there for a minute, eyes on the shoes, brain running calculations, timelines, possible excuses she might come up with. But nothing fit. The house was quiet. Not silent, quiet. That dangerous kind of stillness when something's present, just not visible. I walked through the hallway like I was floating, every step intentional, soundless. Her favorite mug, the ceramic one with the chipped edge she never lets me wash, sat in the sink. Still wet inside. Steam hadn't even fully cleared from the rim. That's what cracked me open just a little. She was supposed to be in Lviv. Work trip. 3 days. Left yesterday morning, bags packed, tight goodbye kiss, not too long, not too short, like always. Efficient. I didn't go upstairs. Not right away. I checked her office instead. Door half closed. The smell hit me before the light did. Sweat and some kind of cologne I didn't recognize. Not mine. Not hers. Something musky and cheap. The printer had paper in the tray, something she always emptied before leaving. One sheet hung halfway out like someone had bumped into it. I didn't read what was on it. Didn't need to. My hands were steady, breath controlled. Heartbeat slow. That's the part that scared me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was just blank. Like my body had known long before my mind caught up. Her phone was on the kitchen counter. She never forgets her phone. Ever. She once came back from a train station because she left it charging at home. That phone is her second skin. This time, though, she'd forgotten it. Left it unlocked too. One notification blinked on the screen. Andre Yoga. Same time next week? My thumb hovered over the message, but I didn't open it. Didn't need to. The name said everything. The fake normality of it. Like he thought she'd told me she was in a class. Like this was routine. Planned. Rehearsed. I heard the floor creak above me. Then the faintest trace of movement. A door closing too gently. Her voice soft, cautious, called out, "Babe." I didn't respond. I turned my back to the phone, to the shoes, to the mug. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator like it held answers. Then I saw it, a single long, red scratch running along her shoulder when she came down the stairs. She was wearing my t-shirt, inside out. Her hair still wet. Too wet. Showered recently. Not from a hotel. Her smile was a second too delayed. "You're home early." I nodded. "I forgot my phone," she added, eyes flicking toward the counter. "You did," I said. We stood there. Silence like pressure in a submarine. Deep. Crushing. She didn't ask about the shoes. Didn't explain the mug. She just stood there, pretending I hadn't already seen too much. Her hand reached for the phone, but I stepped in front of it. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just enough. Her pupil shrank. That was when I knew. Not suspected. Not feared. Knew. Something inside me shut off like a light switch. Not rage. Not pain. Just a methodical, surgical focus. The kind you get right before pulling a trigger. Something had been taken from me, and I was going to take something back. Our life looked perfect on the surface. We had our morning routines, quiet coffee, shared glances over the news, small jokes about our neighbor's yappy dog. She'd sit on the kitchen counter in my hoodie, bare legs swinging lazily, and I'd think, this is it. This is what people chase. I was sure of her. The kind of certainty that doesn't come from grand romantic gestures, but from the silence between two people who've chosen each other again and again. Or so I thought. The first crack was too small to notice. She started coming home a little later. At first, it made sense. New projects at work, team brainstorming after hours, just grabbing a drink with Dasha. All reasonable. But her tone had shifted. Softer, like she was speaking through a filter. Like she was translating her words from another language. I brushed it off. People grow. Maybe she just needed space. That's what she said. Actually, I think I need a bit more time to just be with myself. She made it sound healthy, mature. I didn't want to be the guy who clings. So I nodded, smiled, said I understood. Then came the nights. Long stretches of time where she'd curl up on the far end of the couch, scrolling endlessly through her phone, screen turned just slightly away. No notifications popped up. Ever. Not even from me. I joked once that she must have muted the world to find peace. She smiled, tight-lipped, and said something like that. We stopped touching. Not dramatically. Not with fights or slam doors. Just less. A gentle pulling away, like fabric loosening at the seams. When I reached for her, she'd flinch slightly before softening. Said she was tired. Overwhelmed. Hormonal. But not angry. Never angry. That would have been easier. She started going out more. Not the usual shopping or meeting with friends I knew. These were new names. A friend from Pilates, someone from that book club, a coworker's birthday. I'll just drop by. Once, I offered to drive her, and she hesitated. Said it was across town. I wouldn't know anyone. It'd be boring for me. That's when the lie settled in my gut like cold metal. I didn't say anything. Just smiled and watched her walk out the door in heels I didn't recognize. One evening, she was in a rush to leave for a girls' night. Sprayed on perfume I'd never smelled before. Something sharp and sweet, like citrus and secrets. Said she was meeting Yana and a few others. But when I helped her carry her bag to the car, it felt heavier than usual. Curiosity took over when she left. I popped the trunk. Nestled between a pair of heels and a makeup bag was a brand new, unopened box of condoms. Not ours. Not the brand we used. We hadn't used any in months. The next morning, I acted normal. Asked her how the night went. She yawned, said they stayed late at Yana's watching trashy Netflix shows and talking about their inner child. She laughed. Kissed me on the cheek. My hands didn't tremble. I smiled back. She started spending money. A lot of it. Clothes, accessories, hotel-quality lingerie she never wore at home. Bags from brands she never cared about before. I once saw a receipt from a boutique I didn't even know existed. $500 for a dress I never saw her wear. When I asked, she said it was for a friend's wedding that never actually happened. One night, I tried to check her social media. Her account was still there, but I couldn't see anything. Everything was locked. Private, it said. This content is not available. I asked her about it, jokingly. She said she was doing a digital cleanse, limiting who could see her posts. Something about energy protection. She said it with a straight face, holding her green smoothie like a chalice. I just nodded. Inside, something cracked. She still smiled at me. Still kissed me goodbye. Still left her toothbrush beside mine and wore my socks around the house. But I could feel it. The performance. The gentle, calculated mask she wore like it was part of her skincare routine. She wasn't here anymore. She was preparing her exit emotionally, physically, but not financially. That part was still on me. Her comfort. Her safety net. Her lie. I stopped looking for reassurance. Stopped asking questions. Instead, I listened. I watched. And I waited. She thought she was 3 steps ahead. She had no idea I'd already started counting. It was a Thursday evening. She said she was going to a spa retreat with the girls, a 2-day reset, just us, nature, and no Wi-Fi. She packed her things the night before. Smooth, methodical. A silk robe she'd never worn around me. A new bikini with the tags still on. I watched her fold each item like she was preparing for a ceremony, not a break. She smiled as she zipped the bag, came over, kissed my forehead, not lips, and said, "Please don't worry about me. I just need to feel me again." I nodded. I didn't ask questions. I just watched. After she left, I sat in silence. The kind of silence that presses down on your chest like a weight. I wasn't expecting anything to happen, but I still opened the GPS tracking we had installed last year, just in case. The app blinked a second too long, like it had to decide what to show me. Then it loaded. She wasn't at the spa. She was parked 2 blocks from a cheap motel on the industrial edge of the city. Not near trees or a lake or anything resembling healing. Just a flat, cracked road, a corner store, and a building with curtains too thick for daylight to pass through. I stared at the screen, dead still. Not a blink. Not a twitch. No heat in my chest, no fire. Just that cold click in the back of my brain, like the safety of a weapon switching off. I zoomed in. Watched the blue dot pulse in place. She was inside. I could have called her. I could have driven there. But I didn't. I put the phone down, stood up, and went to do the dishes. Not because they needed doing. I just needed something to move. Later that night, I heard her voice. She didn't know I was home yet. I'd come back early from a meeting, parked 2 blocks away, walked in barefoot. Quiet. Like a ghost. She was in the bathroom, door closed. Her voice was low, soft, but I heard her. The same words she said to me 2 nights ago in bed. You make me feel safe in ways I didn't know I needed. The same tone, same rhythm. Only this time, they weren't for me. I leaned against the wall and listened. She laughed, whispered something I couldn't catch, and then silence. The flush. Water running. She came out like nothing happened. Hair tied up. Wearing my t-shirt again. Like camouflage. She looked at me, eyes wide like a deer in headlights for just a second. Then, that smile. Smooth. Controlled. Didn't hear you come in, she said. I smiled back. Just got in. She kissed me. I kissed her. And I tasted a lie. That night, while she showered, I checked her laptop. She'd left it open. Rookie mistake. I didn't go through her messages, not at first. I went to her calendar. There it was. Color-coded. Clean. Workshop at 7 p.m. Massage at 8. But the location listed was an apartment complex, not a spa. I clicked through her browser history. She'd been reading articles like, How to Tell Your Partner You've Outgrown Them. One tab was still open. A private conversation on Messenger with someone named Eva. Only Eva didn't talk like a friend. We're the red one. The message read. He won't suspect. He's too soft. That was the final click. I closed the laptop, stood up, and stared at her through the frosted glass of the shower. Just a blur of curves and steam. She had no idea. No clue I'd already crossed a line in my head. Not into violence. Not into chaos. Into silence. Strategy. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be a dismantling. She thought I'd break when I found out. That I'd cry. Beg. Maybe scream. She didn't know what I really was. What I'd been before I met her. What I was still capable of. And standing there, in that half-lit hallway, I made myself a promise. She was going to feel what it meant to be outplayed. I didn't ask her where she was anymore. I already knew the answer would be curated. Soft lies, polished like glass, too smooth to hold on to. Instead, I started building the truth myself. Quietly, one move at a time. The first test was simple. She told me she had a long day ahead, back-to-back meetings at the office. I waited until 2:45 p.m. and ordered sushi for her, to be delivered to the company's front desk. I added a note. From your husband, with love. The delivery guy called me an hour later. Said reception couldn't find her. That no one by that name was in the building. I thanked him and told him to keep the food. That night, when she came home, she was glowing, flushed cheeks, fresh makeup. Told me the meeting was exhausting. I nodded and kissed her on the forehead. Next step, her friend, Yana, the go-to alibi. I knew Yana. Nice enough, but flaky. She once forgot her own birthday party. So I created a second account, a fake profile with a name, photos, job history, everything believable. I had my friend Vlad write her a casual message, flirtatious but respectful. He sent 2. Both were read. Neither answered. Then, out of nowhere, the profile was blocked. Not by Yana, by my wife. She had access. She was monitoring that account. That confirmed one thing. She wasn't just hiding something. She was guarding it. I checked her bank card. Not once. Not twice. But every night for 2 weeks. She didn't know I still had the app linked. I'd played dumb after we switched phones last fall. She thought I'd lost access. I didn't. I saw the pattern immediately. Thursdays and Mondays, always around 6 p.m., payments to the same anonymous POS terminal registered under a hospitality group. I looked up the registration code. It belonged to a 3-star motel on the edge of town. No spa, no yoga, just by-the-hour discretion. I screenshot everything and archived it under a new folder on a separate drive. Project Silence. But I didn't go there. Not yet. Instead, I watched her self-care rituals intensify. New books. Expensive creams. Journals with vague titles like Reclaiming Me. I used that. One evening, while she was stretching on her yoga mat, I sat beside her and said, I'm proud of how much you're growing. I feel like I don't even know the new you. She smiled and said, That's the point, isn't it? I let that line sit in my chest like a splinter. Then I leaned in and said, I saw your calendar. Didn't know you were seeing someone named A. Is that your new therapist? Her eyes twitched, just for a second, but I caught it. Yeah, she said too quickly. She's new. Just started with her. She took a sip of water like it could erase the panic. I nodded, kissed her temple, and told her I was happy she had support. The next day, I followed Yana. Not my wife. Yana. She said she was going to meet her after work. I waited outside Yana's office from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. Yana never left. Her car stayed parked the whole time. No movement. My wife, meanwhile, told me later that night they sat by the river and talked about fear. I smiled. Sounds peaceful, I said. In my head, I was already rerouting the plan. That weekend, I faked a short work trip. Left early, packed a bag, even booked a hotel room in another city under my name, just in case she checked. But I never left town. I stayed. Parked 2 streets down, engine off, lights out. Watched the house from a distance like a sniper in position. At 9:43 p.m., a car I didn't recognize pulled up. Lights off. She came out 2 minutes later. Different coat. High boots. Not the one she told me she hated wearing. She got in, and the car disappeared down the road. I waited a full hour before starting my engine. No chase. No rage. Just data. Back home, I logged into her cloud. She'd once used my laptop to back up photos. Password was still cached. Inside, screenshots, saved images, drafts of messages, none addressed to me. One video, 7 seconds long, showed her in bed, whispering into the camera, "You make me feel 20 again." My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. I copied it, archived it, labeled it, checkmate soon. She thought she was playing chess. She didn't know I'd already removed her queen 5 moves ago. It was our 10th university reunion, a gathering filled with nostalgia, laughter, and the subtle competition of who had achieved what. She insisted we attend together, perhaps hoping to showcase a united front. Little did she know, the facade had already crumbled. I agreed, suggesting it might be a fresh start. She donned a red dress, reminiscent of our early days, her hairstyle just as it was during our first year. As she admired herself in the mirror, a familiar, manipulative smile played on her lips. "Ready?" she asked, eyes gleaming with anticipation. I nodded, my response measured. More than ever. We entered the venue side by side. The room buzzed with conversations, clinking glasses, and the occasional burst of laughter. Familiar faces greeted us, though the warmth was noticeably absent. She, once the center of attention, now received fleeting glances and whispered remarks. Her closest friend, Ira, who once referred to her as sister, offered only a curt nod in my direction before turning away. She sensed the shift, her body tensing beside me. "People change," she murmured, attempting to mask her unease. "Perhaps," I replied, sipping my drink, eyes scanning the room. As the evening progressed, the spotlight turned to the most successful alumni. Her name was called, and she ascended the stage with practiced grace. She spoke of her career, personal growth, and the virtues of trust and love. It was then that I stepped forward, positioning myself near the stage without mounting it. From my pocket, I retrieved my phone, connecting it to the projector via Bluetooth, a setup I'd arranged beforehand. Images began to display on the screen behind her, photos, messages, undeniable evidence. The room fell silent, all eyes fixated on the unfolding drama. Her voice faltered as she noticed the shifting attention. Turning, she saw the incriminating visuals. Panic flashed across her face. This isn't what it looks like," she stammered. "It's a misunderstanding." She descended the stage, approaching me with a mix of desperation and defiance. "You set me up. You're trying to ruin me." I remained silent, handing the microphone back to the host and stepping aside. Ira approached her, meeting her gaze with cold detachment. "I've seen everything," she stated. "Don't contact me again." Her parents stood at a distance, their expressions a blend of disappointment and sorrow. Her father looked away, her mother dabbed at tears. The man she betrayed me with was conspicuously absent. I'd ensured he received copies of her duplicity, a revelation that led him to sever ties immediately. She attempted to maintain composure, offering excuses about personal matters, and accusing me of emotional abuse. But the room wasn't buying it. For the first time, she stood exposed, stripped of pretense, vulnerable, and alone. I observed from the sidelines, neither gloating nor intervening. Colleagues approached, offering words of support. "Stay strong," one murmured. I acknowledged them with a nod, feeling a sense of closure. She sank into a chair, head in hands, the weight of her actions pressing down. Looking up, she whispered, "You've destroyed me." I leaned in, voice steady. "No. I merely held up a mirror. What you see is yourself." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her to confront the reality she crafted. Days after the revelation, she appeared at my doorstep, eyes red from tears, demeanor oscillating between remorse and indignation. "We need to talk," she insisted, pushing past me into the apartment. I closed the door behind her, maintaining a composed exterior. She paced the living room, hands wringing. "I can't believe you did that to me," she began, voice trembling. "Publicly humiliating me? After everything?" I remained silent, allowing her to unravel. "You suffocated me," she accused, turning to face me. "Always so predictable, so boring. I needed excitement, something you couldn't provide." Her words were designed to wound, to provoke a reaction. I offered none. Instead, I met her gaze, unflinching. She shifted tactics, tears welling up. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "A terrible mistake. But we can move past this. We've built so much together." She reached out, attempting to touch my hand. I stepped back, the distance between us growing both physically and emotionally. Frustration bubbled within her. "Say something," she demanded. "Yell at me, call me names, do something." I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. "There's nothing left to say," I replied evenly. "Your actions spoke volumes." Her desperation intensified. "I was lost," she pleaded. "I didn't know who I was anymore. But I know I need you. Please, let's fix this." I shook my head, the finality evident. Some things can't be fixed. Realizing her manipulations held no sway, she lashed out one last time. "You're heartless," she spat, cold and unfeeling. I met her accusation with calm resolve. "Perhaps. Or maybe I've just learned to protect myself." She stood there, defeated, the realization dawning that her control over me had evaporated. Without another word, she turned and left, the door closing softly behind her. I stood in the quiet that followed, feeling the weight lift, knowing I'd reclaimed my strength. In the days that followed, I meticulously orchestrated the unraveling of the life she had so carefully constructed. Every move was calculated, every action deliberate. I began by gathering all tangible evidence of her infidelity, messages, photos, receipts, compiling them into an organized dossier. This wasn't about impulsive retaliation. It was about ensuring that when the truth surfaced, it was undeniable. I consulted with a legal advisor, initiating the process to dissolve our shared assets. Bank accounts were separated, joint credit cards canceled. I ensured she no longer had access to the financial comforts she had grown accustomed to. The car, registered in my name, was reclaimed. Our apartment lease, too, was solely under my signature. I prepared the necessary notices for her departure. But the strategy extended beyond mere logistics. I reached out to her parents, requesting a meeting. In their living room, I presented the evidence, not out of malice, but from a place of transparency. They deserved to know the truth about their daughter's actions. The disappointment in their eyes was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the betrayal. Her closest friends were next. Over coffee, I shared my findings, allowing them to draw their own conclusions. The ripple effect was swift. Calls went unanswered, social invitations rescinded. The social network she had cultivated began to fray. At work, discreet conversations with her colleagues revealed a pattern of deceit that extended beyond our relationship. Trust, once broken, is challenging to rebuild. Her professional reputation began to wane, opportunities dwindling as whispers spread. Throughout it all, I maintained a facade of calm. There were no public outbursts, no dramatic confrontations, just a series of methodical steps, each one tightening the noose. Her world didn't collapse in a single moment. It fell apart piece by piece, slowly and cruelly. After the reunion, word spread faster than fire in dry grass. The photos, the texts, the video, no one needed to say anything. People already knew. Her workplace was the first to react. A quiet HR meeting. Due to reputational concerns, they said. Her name was erased from the company site within hours. Co-workers who once laughed at her jokes now looked through her like glass. Her friends? Gone. One by one, like falling dominoes. The same people who cheered for her relationship, who toasted her self-love journey, began ghosting her. Group chats removed her. Her social media, once curated, colorful, full of filtered smiles, turned cold. Empty. Comments dried up. Messages stopped coming in. Except for one. From me. Short. Final. You earned this. Back in her hometown, she became a ghost with a name. The girl who had it all, and threw it away. At the market, neighbors averted their eyes. Old classmates whispered behind her back. Her mother, heartbroken and ashamed, stopped answering her calls. Her father, a man who once proudly introduced her to everyone, now couldn't look her in the eye. The man she threw it all away for, left as soon as the chaos caught up. No more free meals. No more secrecy. He blocked her before she could even ask why. She tried to post something, a story about healing, a quote about pain, but no one cared. No one listened. She moved to a smaller city, rented a single room above a noisy street, got a job at a coffee shop, the kind where no one knew her name and no one asked questions. Then came the message. I still love you. She sent it in the middle of the night. No punctuation. No mask. Just that. I didn't answer. Then another. I miss you every second. Still nothing. Then finally, please, just tell me you remember who I was. I replied. That's the strange part. I don't even remember your name. She showed up again. No call. No message. Just stood at my door like she belonged, except she didn't anymore. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Behind her stood her parents. Quiet. Ashamed. And behind them, parked on the street, was a car I recognized, his. The man she gambled everything for. Now standing far back, arms crossed, eyes down, like even he didn't want to be seen near her anymore. She started yelling before the door was fully open. You destroyed me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Why would you do that? I didn't answer. I just leaned against the doorway and listened. You think this makes you strong? She barked. It doesn't. You're cold. Empty. You never really loved me. Her father tried to calm her down, but she kept going. You smothered me. You were so boring. So perfect it made me sick. Her words cracked like glass hitting the floor. She was unraveling. I stepped forward, face steady. I was your husband. That's someone you don't betray. She slapped me. Not hard. But it landed. Her mother gasped. Her father looked away. The silence after the strike was heavier than the act itself. I didn't move. Just looked her dead in the eyes. You're not broken because of me. You're broken because you got caught. She froze. And then, he spoke, the other guy. Look, I didn't sign up for this. This is your mess. Her head whipped toward him. You said you'd stay. You said I was worth it. He just shrugged. That was before you became this. She looked around. No one stepped in. No one defended her. Her mother wiped her eyes. Her father said nothing. The man she betrayed me for was already getting back in his car. You're all cowards, she screamed. You can't leave me like this. I'm not the villain here. I stepped down the stairs, looked her straight in the face, and said, You're not the villain. You're the lesson. She faded out of everyone's lives like a bad dream. No more invites. No more likes. No more fake smiles. She quit social media. Started over in a city where no one knew what she'd done. Her days were quiet, gray, repetitive. She took the morning shift at a coffee shop, cleaned tables, burned her hands on hot drinks, lived in a rented room that smelled like dust and regret. The messages didn't stop. Please. I can't sleep. Everything reminds me of you. I never answered. Then one day, I got a call. I let it ring out. She tried again. I picked up. Said nothing. She was crying already. I don't know who I am without you, she sobbed. Please, can we talk? I need you. I let the silence sit before I said, I think you need to hear your own words. She sniffled. What? The night you said I was boring. The night you told me you felt dead with me. Remember? She broke down again. I didn't mean it. I didn't know what I was saying. No, I said coldly. You knew exactly what you were saying. And now, you're finally living it. She came to my door a few days later. Again. Shaking. Hollow. I don't want this to be the end, she whispered. I opened the door. Looked her up and down. The makeup was gone. The posture. The pride. Only pieces left. I ruined everything, she said. But if there's even a chance, just one. I stared at her a long moment. Then I said quietly, "What would you do if you were me?" And I closed the door. Forever.